be due to the free electrons. Okay, let us recall a very basic definition. Very basic definition here. The resistance is proportional to the length and it is inversely proportional to the area of cross section. Okay, that is the meaning of Ohm's law or the definition of resistance. So R can be written as a constant rho into L over A. Rho is resistivity and rho is equal to RA over L. Conductivity sigma is 1 over rho and we can write down conductivity as L over R into A. So for conductivity, when we will come after thermal conductivity discussion, we are going to measure the value of R, length and area of cross section of the rod is given. Okay, so we will simply measure R by applying 4-probe method and this expression will give us the value of sigma. Coming to this expression M into N E squared tau. If you begin with free electron theory given by Root and Lorentz, okay, I will not go into the details. What we do, we assume that as if we are going to apply an electric field E, so every electron experiences acceleration E over m, F over m. That is the acceleration. We write down the average velocity V is equal to average velocity U of all the electrons together. And in the absence of electric field, all the electrons are moving here and there, so the average velocity becomes equal to 0. So drift velocity Vd, just by applying the formula V is equal to U plus At. So A is equal to E over m. Okay, and electrons keeps on colliding also when they keep on moving. So therefore, we have to define the mean free path and the relaxation time. So in case of T, we take the average relaxation time, and from there we can write down R to be equal to m, N E square into tau. Class 12th derivation of Ohm's law, because in 9th and 10th we are normally told that V is equal to IR. Okay, and then we derive at class 12th level. Okay, we derive this formula M N E square into tau. M is the mass of the electron, N is the electron density, E is the electronic charge, and tau is the relaxation time. So this is the value of sigma, and this is also a very common expression. N is equal to T into mu, because mu is the mobility. Mobility is nothing but the velocity acquired per unit electric field. V is equal to mu T. So we can write down mu also in terms of tau. So sigma is equal to this one. If we make use of the classical theory, so classical theory gives the value of sigma to be equal to this one. In fact, these expressions has been taken, and here tau has been written just by applying half mv square to be equal to 3 upon 2 kT. We can write down sigma to be equal to this one, and similarly, this is thermal conductivity K. This can be written like this. If we take the ratio of thermal conductivity to electrical conductivity, it comes out to be 3E over T kV. kV is the Boltzmann constant over E whole square. This is called Weidmann-French law. Okay, so the ratio of thermal conductivity to electrical conductivity is constant at a constant temperature. So we take capital T onto this side. So then K over sigma into T becomes a pure constant, because it's 3 over 2 into the ratio of Boltzmann constant to the electronic charge. So this becomes a constant, and we call this as the Lorentz number. Okay, in this course, you are going to determine the value of Lorentz number by two ways. One by this method, that is heat experiment, by determining the value of K and sigma, thermal conductivity and electrical conductivity. Temperature you can find out by thermometer, so we will be able to find out the Lorentz number. You will be doing another very simple experiment by using a simple transistor. Okay, and from transistor also we will calculate the value of Lorentz number, and at the end of the course you can find out yourself which method gives us better L, or we can compare the two results. Okay, so Lorentz number is this one. So here we make use of the classical free electron theory. That means we apply electric field, all the electrons motion becomes directional. We make use of the drift velocity and write down this formula. If we substitute the value of Boltzmann constant and electronic charge here, the value of this comes out to be 1.12 into 10 to the power minus 8 units. Okay, this number is Weidmann-French ratio or Lorentz number. For copper at 200 degrees centigrade, the value of L has been found to be 2.46 into 10 to the power minus 8. So you can see the disagreement between the two. Disagreement between the theoretical value and experimental value. Okay, so to bring this L close to the experimental value, because we are going to determine this in this course also, Fermi-Dirac statistics and quantum mechanics has been applied. Because we can't say anything about this is the experimental value, then we will also find out from the experiment. Okay, and you can check at the end how does your value matches with this value of L. But this value seems to be wrong. That means this has been obtained from free electron theory. So what has been done? If you apply, so thus the classical assumption that all the free electrons of a metal participate in the thermal conduction is not correct. Okay, so then we make use of the quantum theory with Fermi-Dirac statistics, and this reveals that only the electron near the Fermi level take part in thermal and electrical conduction. Okay, you can recall that if you write down the Fermi-Dirac distribution function at T is equal to 0 degree Kelvin, then Fermi level is the highest field level. Okay, below the Fermi level, all the electron states are occupied. Okay, and after the E is equal to EF, the probability EF is equal to 0. But if you increase the temperature at E is equal to EF, it basically turns. Okay, as a function of temperature. So in fact, from quantum theory and Fermi-Dirac, these things will be discussed in more detail by Dr. T.G. Ramesh. Okay, he will talk about thermoelectricity, and then he will describe these things in more detail because he is a condensed matter physicist. So he will talk about Fermi-Dirac level, etc. But at least you can have a feeling that why classical theory is not able to give us the right value of L, and how does quantum theory with Fermi-Dirac statistics help us to get basically the experimental value. So here in this case, the electrons close to the Fermi level take part in thermal electrical conduction. The formula, the sigma is equal to Ma square tau F over M. In the previous case, it was tau. Here it becomes tau F. It is the relaxation time at the Fermi level, are corresponding to E is equal to EF. Okay. Similarly, we can write down K by this formula. If you calculate the ratio of K over sigma again, it comes out to be pi square by 3 Kb over E whole square. You again substitute the value of Kb and E. It comes out to be 2.56 into 10 to the power minus 8. Our experimental value was 2.46. Okay, this is 2.46 into 10 to the power minus 8. So that means the quantum theory with Fermi-Dirac statistics takes care of this relation, and our aim is to find out the value of electrical conductivity and thermal conductivity by making use of this experiment. Now I will talk about the experiment. Here a copper rod. This is a copper rod. Okay, its length is 15 centimeter. It's a copper tube. It is the same tube that is used for refrigeration. It is used refrigerated. It's a hollow tube. It is called DHP, dioxidized high phosphorus copper. Okay, DHP is given in manual. So its length is 15 centimeter. Its outer diameter is 9.5 mm and wall thickness is 0.575 millimeter. So this is a tube, so it's a hollow tube. Now in the middle, a heater of 2 watt is placed in the middle. So we have a heater here, it has been placed in the middle. Heater is nothing but a 2 watt 22 ohm resistor, okay, that has been placed here. So what we do, we take a resistor, we wrap it with Teflon wire, okay, and put it in the middle, and we fill the gap between the copper tube and the heater by aluminum foil, okay, so that there is a proper thermal contact with the outer rod, for determining the thermal conductivity. Okay, so this is the heater in the middle. Heater is there. Here, Teflon. Just to, in fact, these are the 2 wires that we have to take. So on these 2 wires also, we put lot of Teflon wire. Then we drill a hole. We drill a hole here. Okay, and again we have to insulate this copper wire from the copper tube. So we have to basically wrap it with Teflon tube. Same thing has been done here also. We have a Teflon tube first, and then here we have the aluminum foil, so that there is a proper thermal contact with the outer tube and this one. Then we take 2 copper constant thermocouples. Okay, copper constant thermocouple. These are nothing but if you take 2 dissimilar material, join them together, keep one end at the hot temperature, make one end hot and the other at the cold, some thermo EMF gets generated, and that thermo EMF gives the information about the temperature, or it gives the temperature difference. So here we have a copper constant thermocouple. One end of a copper constant thermocouple is glued onto this tube here and another here. The distance between the two is d1. It is 6 cm. You need not to rely on these data because these data are given in your manual also. When you are there on the experiment, you have to check the tube on which if it is written as 5 cm, so make use of 5 cm in your calculation. Okay, so the idea here is the distance between two thermocouples is large. It's a 4, 5, 6 cm. Then we have basically two current leads. They are soldered at the two ends. We have a current lead here is meant for current lead 1, and we have another current lead here. So these are the two current leads. We will connect them to a constant current source, and we will allow a current to pass through. And we again solder here two voltage leads also. The distance between the copper leads, the distance between the voltage leads here is D2, and that D2 is 14.8 cm. So you can check the rod length is 15 cm, but the two voltage leads are at 14.8 cm. So they are at the end, and we need not to know the distance between the current leads. It's the 4-probe method. I will discuss more about this. Okay, you also have to understand 2-probe method and 4-probe method. Okay, today I am going to talk about the 4-probe method. Here we are using 4-probe method. 4-probe method means you want to measure the resistivity of a sample. Okay, what you can do, you can allow a current to pass through at this end. You have two terminals here, two leads. Okay, and on those two leads, in fact, it's something like this. This is a resistance that you want to measure. Okay, we put a source here. This is the source. We allow a current to pass through. The current goes this way, and we measure the voltage 1 and 2 between the two terminals. This is two-probe method. And in 4-probe method, what we do? Okay, we have a current source here. Okay, we allow a current to pass through here, but we measure the voltage between the two intermediate positions. These are 3 and 4. This is 1 and 2. So for this particular experiment, for copper case, we are going to use the 4-probe method, but at some places we will make use of 2-probe method also. So you have to understand the superiority of 4-probe method over 2-probe also. Okay, we will discuss about this. So we have a copper tube in the middle over 3 cm. We have a heater. Heater is nothing but 22 ohm resistor carrying 2 watt power. The maximum current that we can pass through this heater is 260 milliampere. That is why while doing the experiment, we will begin with 260 milliampere, and then we will bring down the current by 20 milliampere every time, 260, 240, 220, etc. Suppose you are going to take 5 readings, so you have to begin with 260 for this thermal conductivity and bring it down to 200 or 180 milliampere. Upper limit should not exceed this, otherwise the heater will burn. Okay, so copper tube with the heater, thermocouples 1 and 2. So now what is done? This whole rod, okay, it is wrapped with cotton. In fact, one box is right now lying open because there is some problem. You can visit sometime to the lab and you can have a look also. Okay, so it is covered with cotton, then wrapped with aluminum foil, again with cotton, and then aluminum foil, and lot of paper will also you will find inside, because we can avoid convection and radiation by this. Because we are going to apply the conduction. Okay, conduction has to dominate, so radiation and convection has to be avoided. So all these things are done, and we pack it inside a box, and from outside what you will see? You will see 2 connections for the current, 2 for the thermocouple, this one, and 2 for this thermocouple, 2 for the voltage leads, and 2 for the current leads. So in total, on the front panel of the equipment that I will show you after this, you are going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 terminals are there. 2 for voltage, 2 for current. They are used for electrical conductivity measurement. For thermal conductivity measurements, only this part thermocouple and the heater will be used. Okay, this is how the box looks like. Okay, so you pack it and you put it inside a box like this. Here you can see this is a RCA socket. RCA stands for Radio Corporation of America. Okay, these are some special types of just like coaxial cable. Coaxial cable, you have basically a point connector and the surrounding wire. So here this is the coaxial cable or RCA socket, and here inside one copper constant thermocouple is connected. Another copper constant thermocouple is here. So thermocouple 1, thermocouple 2 is connected to the RCA socket here. We have then the heater is connected to these two terminals. So these terminals are the lower one, they are for thermal conductivity measurement. The upper terminal you can see here, this is CL1, this is CL2, this is BL1, this is BL2. So there are two terminals to connect the constant current source which will allow a current to pass through, and we are going to measure the voltage here like this. We are going to measure the voltage in the intermediate range. So that is why we are concerned about this distance. We are not going to be concerned about the current positions, that what is the distance between the two. Then what else we need? Okay, so we are using the thermocouple. So thermocouple, so what we have to do here in this case, there are two thermocouples. So we are going to connect one thermocouple here, another thermocouple has to be connected here. Okay, so then first of all, to begin with, I told you in the morning that you have to short the input terminals I1. So either you connect it to ground or you short. Shorting also ensures that the potential difference between the two terminals is equal to 0. So then you have to connect a digital multimeter in 200 millivolts range here. Okay, so first short these two by a wire, connect a digital multimeter here, okay, and check the reading. You will get some arbitrary reading. Then you have to reduce it to a minimum by using this offset. So once you set the offset, now you reverse this by using this switch. Reversing, the sign of a reading should not change. If the sign of a reading does not change, so that means the offset is constant irrespective of the reversal of a switch also. Because 0 and 0, even if you are reversing also, that means it is the same. Only the unwanted signal is present. So if you are getting the same one, okay, same after this one, so that means the offset is set for the experiment. Then the other instrument that you need is a constant current source here. Okay, constant current source, it is basically in the high current position. High current because we take 260 milliampere current for conductivity measurement. So here we have to put it in high. Okay, and then these are the two knobs by which we fix the current. The banana terminals EH on the conductivity box for thermal conductivity, lower side for thermal conductivity, and CL1 and CL2 for electrical conductivity. Okay, these are for electrical conductivity. You can see again this one. Okay, so these are CL1, CL2 and BL1, BL2. So these four extreme knobs for electrical conductivity and the middle one for thermal conductivity. Then, so this is the box. Here also again the same thing. The lower four knobs are for thermal conductivity measurement and the upper four are for electrical conductivity measurement, and two are independent of each other. So we need a DC differential amplifier. We need a constant current source to heat this. Okay, because unless and until we heat, we will not be able to find out thermal conductivity. So let us now move on to the basic. For thermal conductivity, we make use of the steady state. You must have read in the beginning that when we define the formula Q is equal to Ka delta T over delta D, what we do, we have a rod. We heat it here. Okay, normally intermediate in my time, now it's BSc and most of the others don't have the experiment. The results operators of determination of K. So you have basically a huge tube and there are thermometers. So you put, you boil water, the steam passes through it, and we put certain thermometers. So initially all the thermometers are at the same temperature. Okay, now you start heating here. Suppose we heat a rod here directly. We put a source here. So what will happen? The thermometer reading here will start increasing, and after about 30-35 minutes, what we have to do? We have to take the reading after 5 minutes. Why 5 minutes? Because after certain time, the temperature of these thermometers will become constant. The temperature of this thermometer will be less than the temperature of this. The longer the distance from the source, lesser will be the temperature. But the thermometer temperature will become constant. So that is the steady state. And in steady state, delta T over delta Z is called temperature gradient. Okay? And the heat here is proportional to the area of cross section of the rod, and it depends upon the temperature gradient, that in our case is delta T over D. So you remember that in the middle we have a heater here, we have basically a thermocouple on this side, we have a thermocouple on this side. So when we heat it, what happens is heat is conducted on this side also and on this side also. Suppose Q is the heat given by the heater. So we can make use of the formula Q is equal to I square R to find out the heat. Because the resistance of a heater is 22 ohm is known to us. The current that we are passing through the heater is also known to us. We assume that there are no convection and radiation losses. So if there are no convection and radiation losses, the heat that is transferred to the copper rod will be equal to I square into R. So the value of Q is known to us. Okay, the value of K we have to find out. Area of cross section depends upon the dimension of the rod. Delta T over D, you know the distance between the two copper constant leads. The thermocouple reading will give you the value of delta T on this side also and on this side also. They are equidistant from the middle, and the thermometer is the heater is exactly located in the middle. So heat is transferred both sides equally. If we are able to find out the value of delta T by using thermocouple, we can find out the value of K, that is the thermal conductivity. Okay, so here to obtain a measurable temperature difference of few degrees centigrade, and at the same time to keep the heat power about 1 watt, one must decrease the area of cross section and increase the distance at T for a good conductor like copper. For poor conductor, it will be other way around. You can check it like this. See delta T. We want appreciable temperature distance difference between the two, because we are going to put a copper constant thermometer. If the difference between the temperature will be very small, we will be able to have a very small thermo EMF. And even after amplifying it 100 times, we will not be able to have reasonable value. So we want the value of delta T to be few degrees centigrade, and at the same time we can't increase the heat power also beyond 1 watt. Okay, so what we have to do, we can write down delta T to be equal to Q upon Ka into T. So we can decrease the value of A and we can increase the value of T to get a reasonable value of delta T. Okay, simply you can rearrange the terms and check this logic that why for this area cross section must be small. For poor conductors, we will argue later that this should be large and this should be small. That is why for poor conductor the samples are taken in the disc form. In this area is large and thickness is small. Okay, so to get appreciable temperature difference, we basically take this one. That is why we use a tube. Okay, a tube area of cross section is determined by the diameter and the thickness by the tube is small, and the major temperature difference between the 2 points separated by a distance of few centimeters. The value D is large, the area is small. That is why we are using a hollow tube. Okay, the surface area over which the heat is lost by radiation and convection is large, because entire area is available for the heat to get lost. Okay, however, a good conductor, most of the heat is conducted and only a small part of it is lost by radiation. This loss can be reduced by lagging the tube to reduce convection and by surrounding the lagging by a layer of aluminum foil to reduce. We wrap it with cotton, we wrap it with aluminum foil, we put lot of papers just to take care of the convection and radiation losses. Then only we can write down the conduction equation. This is thermal conductivity measurement. Okay, you can see these two terminals. This is thermocouple 1. Thermocouple 1 is connected to I1. Okay. Thermocouple 2 is connected to I2. Okay. And this is constant current source. The current from this is allowed to pass through the heater. So we heat the sample here. Okay. So we allow a current to pass through 260 milliampere current is set here on this panel. We pass that current through the electrical and thermal conductivity box here. Okay, and then we measure the temperature here. We connect this here and this here. We leave this setup. Once we set up the current to be equal to, let us say, 260 milliampere, now we have to wait for 45 minutes till steady state is reached. Just now I gave you the example of thermometer. Here you don't have the thermometer, but what you can do, you can keep on checking the reading of the two thermocouples. Thermocouples reading will increase. Okay, and the situation will come, maybe I am saying 45 minutes, maybe at 35 minutes itself you find the two readings are consistent, so you can take the reading. So these experiments have been designed in such a way so that during 45 minutes you can perform some other experiment. So in those 45 minutes you can do some other experiment. That is how these experiments are designed. So here again, so you take the reading in steady state. So you have to start off with a current of 260 milliampere, wait 45 minutes before taking a reading, steady state condition. Note output of the thermocouple 1, V1 plus and V2 plus. Now reverse the switch, take V1 minus and V2 minus. Okay, repeat the measurements for intercurrents of 200 milliampere in steps of 20 milliampere, wait for 45 minutes for every measurement. So you have to take it. Okay, we were worried just now that with this type of a power interaction, every time it will come soon, but it goes anyway for 5 minutes. You will not be able to perform this experiment. So we are arranging either shifting the lab from here to some other lab where we have the proper backup, or connecting it with a generator when you people are doing the experiment. Otherwise, this experiment will never be completed. Okay, so don't exceed the current because it's a drawback of this. Now heat, as I told you, heat input Q is equal to I square R. So you are going to fix the current to 60, to 40, to 20, 200, 180 for 5 readings. Okay, the value of R is written up there, that is 22 ohm right now. So you can find out the value of Q. Assuming no heat loss due to convection and radiation, we can write down total heat generated by the heater because heat is going on either side. So we are going to have two thermocouples here and two thermocouples are here. So the value of Q dash on one side of a thermocouple will be K A D1 upon delta D1. In fact, it's a K A. It should be other way around. K A. Anyway, it's okay. K upon A into delta D by D1. Delta D by D1 on one side will be the thermal gradient. Similarly, on the other side, delta T2 upon D1, D1 is the same. So delta D1 and delta T2 can be calculated from the output of the differential amplifier, keeping in mind the amplification factor because you are multiplying your voltage by 100. So this is the voltage V1 plus V minus divided by 2. Okay, so you have to take the difference. See, please don't care about the sign, whatever, whether your readings are positive or negative. You have to remember that you have to take the difference. If one reading is positive, another reading is negative, if you subtract the two bits added. Okay, if both the readings are coming out to be positive or negative because of a large offset, so you have to take the difference. So amplification factor here is 100. So thermo EMF will be V1 plus V2, sorry, V1 plus minus V1 minus divided by 2 divided by 100. Now 100 is the amplification factor. So this is the actual voltage. So we can rewrite this as 1000, the same thing here, into microvolt because 1000 microvolt is this 100 is gone. To 1000 into, okay, 1000 is 10 to the power of 3. So 1 millivolt is 10 to the power of 3 of microvolts. The thermoelectric power of copper transmitter thermocouple is 40 microvolt per degree Kelvin. Okay, it means that if you change the temperature by 1 degree Kelvin, the change in voltage will be 40 microvolt. So here we have basically the voltage difference between one copper cast-iron thermocouple on one side and another copper cast-iron thermocouple on the other side. So what we can do here, we can find out the value of delta T1 to be equal to this reading. In fact, here you divide it by 40, it's microvolt. So you divide it by 40, microvolt and microvolt will cancel and it gets converted into degree Kelvin. So it becomes this divided by 8. Okay, 40 microvolt per degree Kelvin. This is known that if the temperature increases by 10 degree Kelvin or 10 degree centigrade, which is the same thing. Change in temperature in degree centigrade and degree Kelvin is the same. So if we change the temperature by 10 degree centigrade here, the change in voltage will be 400 microvolts. So we measure this voltage, that is why we have written in microvolts. Okay, so we divide this by 40 to convert this voltage into degree Kelvin. Similarly, we can write down T2 to be equal to this divided by. Okay, so the reading of the copper cast-iron thermocouple measured by DC differential amplifier are converted into the temperature delta T1 and delta T2. So we now know Q is equal to Q dash plus K upon D1 delta T1 plus delta T2. Area is pi by 4 outer diameter square minus inner diameter square. Pi r square outer minus pi r square inner. Okay, so here it is written in terms of a diameter, that is why you see a factor of 4 here. So pi by 4 outer diameter square minus inner diameter square. The outer diameter of a rod is given, so inner diameter can be calculated by subtracting twice of the thickness from the outer diameter. This is the wall thickness, so we can find out the area. This is the table that you have to make. D1 is known for my readings, it was 6 centimeter. D1 upon A you can calculate. The resistance of a heater is this one. So what you measure? You measure basically that you first set the current, you wait for 45 minutes. This is simply I square R. R is known, R is 22 ohms. So this column is simply I square R. So you take the reading of thermocouple 1, then reversing it, thermocouple 2 here and reverse it. So once you take the reading of first thermocouple and then reversing it, you just add the 2, you just subtract the 2 and divide it by 2. 19.4 plus 27.4 divided by 2. Okay, so this becomes a plus, so it comes out 23.4. Now you divide it by 4 because there was a factor of 4. You can find out the corresponding temperature. This is temperature. This is the temperature. Delta T1. Similarly, you calculate the value of delta T2. You add the 2. So this is delta T. And by you now calculate the value of Q over delta T. You can check yourself how consistent are the value of Q over delta T. So you take the average value of Q over delta T. The value of A is Q over delta T into D1 over A. It comes out to be 320 watt per millikelvin. For very pure copper, it is 401 watt per millikelvin. But copper tubes used for refrigeration, in the beginning I mentioned about DHP, deoxidized high phosphorus copper, the value is reported as 340. So since we have not used the pure copper, so that is why we are getting the value close to this. Every time we repeat the experiment, we get the value somewhere between 310 to 330. So this is 320 for this particular measurement. So that is how we measure the thermal conductivity. Now we move to the electrical conductivity. Electrical conductivity, 4 probe methods are used. 4 probe here, this arrangement, you have the copper current, you have the current leads here, and in between you measure the voltage. Okay. So you start the voltage here, there is no upper limit. So you can start with 300 milliampere and go up to 600 milliampere in the step of 550 milliampere. Okay, you are not using the heater right now. You are allowing the current to pass through the 2 current leads at the extreme. So there is no upper limit for the current. And note the voltage in each case and the reverse also, and no waiting time is required. required. So this is just 4-5 minutes experiment. You can do any time in between. Okay. So what we do here is, this is this slide. Advantage of 4-probe method is that the separation of current and voltage probes eliminate the impedance contribution of the wiring and contact resistance. Here, suppose you want to measure 1 ohm resistance. In nutshell, if you want to measure high resistance, you can go for 2-probe method. But if you want to measure low resistance, then you have to prefer 4-probe. The reason is the following. Suppose we want to measure 1 ohm resistance, we connect a constant current source here and let the current run from the constant current source is 10 milliampere. Okay. So here V across 1 and 2, the voltage here across 1 and 2 will be D I into R. R means this one, and we have basically the two contacts also. Okay. So R of the contact also. The contact, the resistance of a contact depends upon the fact that how good is your contact. Okay. So for a very nice soldering, the contact resistance is of the order of 10 milliohm. So it's 0.02. So suppose I want to measure 1 ohm, so my voltage will become now, because the current is going to pass through these two ends also. So it is 10 into 1 and 0.01 into 10 here, and here also 0.01 into 10. So the total voltage that we are going to measure is not 10, but it is 10 into 1 plus the voltage drop across the contact. Okay, so if you calculate the error is this is 0.02. Okay, 0.02 into 100, so that is 2% error in the measurement due to the contact resistance. Suppose in place of 1 ohm, suppose we have 1 milliohm, the error will be much larger than this. Okay, but here suppose we are going to measure the same resistance 1 ohm. We now assume we have a long wire. Okay, we have a long wire, and if the resistance is very small, so the current is allowed to pass through again the same in 1 and 2, but we are going to use a very high impedance voltmeter that is connected between 3 and 4 terminals, and we make use of this voltmeter. Ideal definition of a voltmeter is that its resistance must be infinity. So if it is resistance is infinity, infinity is very large, it hardly draws any current. So if we measure 3-4, so this will become V34, that is 10 millivolts. Suppose the current is not diverted, the current is going this way only. So 10 into 1, 10 millivolt will be the reading. But suppose we take care of the voltmeter resistance, let the current that is going to pass through this is 1 microampere. This is the contact resistance twice, so this hardly makes any difference to this reading. That is the beauty of 4-probe method measurements over 2-probe. There are many other. If you talk in terms of research, sometimes it's not possible to make proper contact. In 4-probe method, we prefer press contact also. In your lab also you might have, basically you put a cylinder or aluminum sample and you have basically the spring loaded things, so you can press it. Okay, so that even the problem of the contact can also be avoided. So you have to be careful. Right now I am going to talk about a 4-probe method for electrical conductivity measurement. Tomorrow again when I will talk about TCR of copper, thermal resistance of alpha. Alpha is a coefficient of linear expansion of copper. Then again we will make use of 4-probe method. But when we will calculate the band gap of silicon semiconductor, we will make use of 2-probe. The idea is if the resistance to be measured is very large, we go for 2-probe. But if the resistance to be measured is small, here we are using a copper wire. Copper is a good conductor, resistance is small, so that is why we prefer 4-probe method. Okay, this is for electrical conductivity measurements. Okay, again we have to use the same constant current source. So constant current source is connected to the two extremes, and the voltage which we have to measure between the two terminals, voltage is also small because copper has a small resistance. So here this voltage is fed to the third terminal of, because these two are provide for thermal conductivity. So you have to make the measurements by using L3. So when you take the measurement, you throw away this switch to L3 and measure the digital multimeter reading. Okay, so you measure the current current is measured from here only. So you measure the current, and the voltage is measured by using DC differential amplifier. Okay, so sample readings are like this. So this is the current, this is V plus, this is V minus. So you corrected means this minus this divided by 2. Okay, and this is the potential difference. You now plot a graph between the current and the voltage. So the graph comes out to be a perfect straight line. You fit a straight line. Okay, you have to do all these things by using Excel or origin. Okay, so this graph, the slope of a graph comes out to be 194 micro ohm. That is nothing but the resistance of this one of the copper wire. So slope is 194. That is obtained from the graph between the potential V is equal to IR. Electrical conductivity is sigma 1 over R into Vt over A, the simple formula, and we get the value of sigma to be equal to 3.82 into 10 to the power 7 Siemens. Okay. For pure copper, the value is this one. For DHP, that has been used here as a value somewhere between the two. Okay. So the lower value of electrical conductivity is probably the Q is not properly annealed. That is why we are getting the value slightly less than the reported value for DHP copper. Now we calculate the Lorentz number. A over rho into D, kappa rho into D. So this is our value for thermal conductivity. This is for electrical conductivity and the temperature. So we get a value of 2.87 into 10 to the power minus 8. Okay, it's not very close to this, but it gives us some idea. You can compare the two results. One obtained by this method and other by using electronics, that is transistor. We now move on to the measurement of thermal conductivity of a poor conductor. Okay. Again the same thing, thermometry, that's why the steady state method is used. Okay, but the problem here is Q is equal to Ka into delta T over D. For poor conductor, the value of K is much smaller than 1. Okay, so a small amount of heat will produce large temperature gradient. But delta T will be equal to Q upon K. K will now come to the denominator. So smaller the value of K means the value of delta T will be very large. So we have to control the value of delta T. So to control this and keep the heat power of the order of 1 watt, we have to increase the area and we have to decrease, okay, the thickness. We have to reduce the thickness and we have to increase the area. It is unlike the previous case in case of copper. Okay, so for poor conductor, that is the reason why for poor conductor one uses a plate method in which plate has a surface area of few square centimeter and the thickness of the order of 1 mm. Okay, the poor conductor that we are going to take here is the perspex. Perspex is basically a machinable material. You can, if you want to join the two perspex material, you can take a drop of chloroform, put them together, they are hard like anything. Okay, and they can withstand higher temperature also. It's available normally in every lab to basically just design one or the other things. So here again experimental details, that is not here. Okay, I will explain you. So what is in this case is taken, there are 2 cups of copper, 2 hollow cups of copper, so they are taken, and then a heater that is designed, this is given. This is copper base plate, okay, not copper. This is 2 halves of copper, 2.5 centimeter dia, outer height 5 millimeter, inner height 3 millimeter. So we have 1 cup, we have another cup. And between the 2 cups here, okay, we have a heater, and the heater here is made up of 6 resistances of 120 ohm for the bond, and they are all connected in parallel. So if you take 120 ohm quarter watt resistance, they are 6 in number, they are parallel, the total resistance will be 20. 1 by 120, 1 by 126 times, so it becomes 20 ohm. So we have a heater of 20 ohm. What we do? We just pipe it between the 2 hollow copper. This is one and this is one. This is inverted, this is normal copper tube. So we pipe it inside, and in between we have again the aluminum foil. Aluminum foil is filled just to have a proper thermal contact. So this is basically the total heater is nothing but two copper cups enclosing a heater made up of effective 20 ohm resistance. Okay, on the top of this we have perspex disc of 4.5. This perspex disc 2.5 centimeter dia and about 0.2 centimeter thickness. So we have basically our heater. On one side we put one perspex plate, we put another perspex plate here also, and then on the top again a copper base plate of 5 centimeter square, 5 millimeter thick at the top and 5 millimeter 5 centimeter square and 5 millimeter at the bottom, and they are packed now with 4 bolts. So we have a compact system, and that is there inside the box. Okay, so heater is enclosed inside the 2 cups made up of copper. They are properly wrapped, so whatever heat is generated by the heater, it is communicated to copper. Copper is a good conductor, so we assume nothing happens because of the copper, and the whole heat gets transferred to perspex. Then we have basically the connection part. In fact, we are not able to see the figure, okay, because of I think the color choice. देखिए भाई क्या कह रहा है, ये तो कुछ दो बैटरी हो गया।